I ignored this for a long time. A colleague of mine kept bringing up the fascial connection between the arm and the jaw. And I kept filing it under interesting, but clinically irrelevant. That was my position for the better part of a decade. Then she pressed a point on my inner elbow during a conference workshop, and I felt something release in my throat. Not a dramatic sensation, more like a thread going slack that I didn't know was taut. I went home that weekend and spent 14 hours reading dissection studies. What I found made me uncomfortable because it meant I'd been looking at jaw tension and honestly at facial aging from the wrong end of the body. Press your inner elbow right now. Use your opposite thumb. Find the bony bump on the inside, about 2 finger widths above where you'd say your funny bone lives, and push into the soft tissue just beside it. Hold that pressure for 10 seconds. Some of you will feel a dull ache that seems to travel up the inside of your arm. Some will feel a faint tug near the front of your neck. And some will feel nothing yet, which is fine. The anatomy doesn't care whether you feel it on the first try. That point you're pressing sits at the origin of a fascial chain that runs continuously from the medial epicondyle of your elbow to the periosteum of your mandible, your jawbone. Thomas Myers mapped this continuity in his Anatomy Trains work. The deep front arm line connecting through the brachial fascia, through the cervical layers, into the platysma, and terminating at the lower border of the jaw. It is a single, unbroken sleeve of connective tissue, and when one end of that sleeve shortens, the other end gets pulled. There are 4 connections in this chain that almost nobody talks about. 4 points where the tension in your bent arm converts into downward drag on your face. I want to walk through each one, starting at the elbow and ending at the jaw, because the order matters. The order is the mechanism. And the mechanism is why a 60-second press at the bottom of the chain can change the tension at the top. The 4th connection, the most distant from the jaw and the one you can access most easily, is the medial epicondyle itself. This is the bony prominence on the inner side of your elbow. It's where 5 forearm flexor muscles converge into a shared tendon. 5 separate contractile units, all anchoring to the same postage stamp sized piece of bone. Dr. Carla Stecco at the University of Padua has spent years dissecting this region in cadaveric specimens. What her work shows is that the fascial tissue at the medial epicondyle is among the densest in the upper limb. Not the thickest, the densest. The fibers are packed so tightly that under sustained compression, typing, gripping, scrolling, holding a phone, they lose their ability to glide past each other. They become matted. Stecco's term for this is densification, and she's documented it histologically. The hyaluronic acid between fascial layers becomes viscous, almost gel-like, and the layers that should slide freely begin to stick. Think of this as a bond that's been compounding silently in a portfolio you forgot to check. Every hour your elbow stays bent past 90 degrees, a small deposit of tension accrues at the epicondyle. And within that bond, at the level of the individual fascial layers, each stuck layer is like a coupon payment reinvesting itself back into the principal. The compounding is invisible for years. You don't feel your inner elbow aging. You feel your jaw getting heavy. Press that spot again, harder this time. Notice where the ache radiates. For most people over 50, the referred sensation travels proximally, up the inside of the forearm, toward the elbow crease, and sometimes past it. That radiation pattern isn't random. It's following the fascial sleeve. The 3rd connection sits higher. The brachial fascia, a continuous sheath of connective tissue wrapping the upper arm from elbow to axilla, functions as the transmission cable for whatever happens at the epicondyle. Run a finger slowly up the inside of your arm, from the elbow crease towards your armpit. Around the midpoint of your upper arm, the texture under your skin changes. It gets denser, less mobile. That's the medial intermuscular septum, a thick fascial wall that divides the flexor compartment from the extensor compartment of the arm. And it is continuous with the brachial fascia above and the antebrachial fascia below. One structure, not 3 separate tissues that happen to be neighbors. One fabric with regional names. Carla Stecco published findings in the Journal of Anatomy demonstrating measurable continuity between the brachial fascia and the axillary fascia, the connective tissue of the armpit. Tension doesn't stop at anatomical borders that humans drew on diagrams. Tension follows the fabric. And when the fabric at the elbow end tightens, from years of flexion, from gripping, from the modern arm posture that none of us can escape, the tightness propagates upward through the brachial sleeve like a wrinkle traveling through a bolt of cloth. The wrinkle doesn't stay where it started. It migrates toward the nearest fixed point. In this case, the fixed point is the shoulder. Here is where something reassuring needs to be said. This is a fixable problem. The fascial system is not a static structure. It remodels in response to mechanical input. Robert Schleip's research group at Ulm University has been studying fascial plasticity for over 2 decades, and the consistent finding is that sustained pressure, held for a minimum of 60 seconds, produces measurable viscoelastic deformation in fascial tissue. The matted fibers begin to separate. The hyaluronic acid returns to its liquid state. Glide restores. This isn't speculative tissue biology. It's reproducible under ultrasound imaging. The second connection is the one that surprises people most, because it's the bridge between 2 body regions that nobody thinks of as connected. The cervical fascia, the deep connective tissue layers of the neck, is continuous with the axillary fascia through a series of fascial seams at the scalene muscles and the first rib attachment. Luigi Stecco, working independently from his more famous relative Carla, published research on fascial force transmission across these junctions. What he found is that mechanical tension applied to the brachial fascia produces measurable displacement in the cervical fascial layers. Not theoretical displacement, measurable, under laboratory conditions with strain gauges. If the epicondyle bond is compounding inside the garment of brachial fascia, then the cervical fascia is the lining of that garment, a separate layer stitched to the outer fabric at specific seam points. The scalene attachments are those seams. Pull the outer fabric downward, which is what chronic elbow flexion does, and the seams transmit that pull to the lining. The lining tightens, the front of the neck shortens, and everything attached to the front of the neck gets dragged along. Turn your head slowly to one side while pressing your inner elbow with your opposite thumb. Notice the range. Now release the pressure and turn again. For a meaningful percentage of people, the range is different. Not dramatically, enough to register. That small difference is the cervical fascia responding to a change in tension 3 feet away at the elbow. The skeptic in the room says, that's placebo. The anatomy says, it's architecture. And that brings us to the first connection, the one closest to the jaw, the one that explains why your face changes shape in your 50s and 60s in ways that have nothing to do with skincare. The platysma is a broad, thin muscle that covers the front of the neck, from the clavicle to the mandible. It's the muscle that tenses when someone grimaces or strains. But the platysma is not just a muscle. It's a muscular layer embedded within the superficial cervical fascia, and its upper fibers insert directly into the periosteum of the mandible, the membrane covering the jawbone, and into the SMAS, the superficial musculo-aponeurotic system of the face. Research published in Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery has documented this connection in detail. The platysma's superior attachments blend with the tissues responsible for lower facial contour. When the platysma is pulled downward, the jawline descends with it. This is why jaw sagging accelerates after 50. It isn't only about collagen loss. It isn't only about bone resorption, though both of those contribute. There is a mechanical component, a literal downward pull originating in the fascial chain below that has been accumulating for decades. The account balance everyone watches is the jawline, but the withdrawals have been happening at the elbow, compounding through the arm, transmitting through the neck, and arriving at the mandible as a slow, persistent downward force. You cannot fix the account balance by working on the account balance. You fix it by locating the source of the withdrawals. A woman came to my practice with chronic medial elbow pain, both arms. She'd been a legal secretary for 27 years, and her forearms were so chronically flexed that she couldn't fully straighten either elbow. Extension stopped at about 160 degrees. She wasn't there for her jaw. She had never connected the two. During the initial assessment, I pressed the medial epicondyle on her right arm, the same point you pressed a few minutes ago, and asked her to swallow while I held the pressure. Her eyes changed. She said the swallow felt easier, less resistance in her throat. I didn't make promises. I showed her the elbow release and told her to do it nightly for 6 weeks. She came back 8 weeks later, not 6 because she'd been traveling. Her forearm pain had improved. She estimated 60% reduction. Still present, but manageable, no longer waking her at night. The jaw finding was incidental. Her husband had mentioned it before she noticed it herself, that her chin looked different. Not younger, he said, less heavy. She'd been wearing her night guard for bruxism, and it no longer fit the same way. The dental impression hadn't changed. Her jaw had shifted enough to alter the contact pattern. The night guard needed refitting. 60% improvement on the arms, a measurable change in mandibular position. Not a transformation, a mechanical correction, partial and specific, from a 60-second press at the inner elbow. Here is the protocol. 1 intervention, minimum effective dose. Find the medial epicondyle on your right arm, the bony bump on the inside of your elbow. Place the thumb of your left hand just beside it, not on the bone, but on the soft tissue immediately adjacent, on the side closest to your body. You're targeting the common flexor origin, where the fascial density is highest. Start with light pressure. Over the first 20 seconds, gradually increase until you're pressing firmly enough to feel a deep ache. Not sharp pain, not nerve tingling. If you feel an electric sensation shooting into your ring and little fingers, you've drifted onto the ulnar nerve. Move your thumb slightly toward the front of the arm and try again. Hold that firm pressure for 40 seconds. 60 seconds total from when you first made contact. During the hold, breathe normally. You may feel the tissue soften under your thumb around the 30-second mark. You may feel a subtle sensation traveling up the inner arm. You may feel nothing beyond local pressure. All 3 responses are normal. The viscoelastic deformation that Schleip's lab documented happens below perceptual threshold in many people. The tissue is changing whether you feel it or not. Repeat on the left arm. Same point, same pressure, same duration. Once daily. The optimal timing is evening, when cortisol-mediated fascial stiffness is lowest and the tissue is most responsive to sustained pressure. Pair it with something you already do. After brushing your teeth, during the last minutes of a television program, while waiting for a kettle. The anchor matters more than the time. 14 days is the minimum window before reassessing. Fascial remodeling is not instant. The densification at the epicondyle developed over years. It will not reverse in a single session. But cumulative daily release, 60 seconds per arm, begins to restore glide in the brachial sleeve. And as glide restores, the downward transmission through the cervical bridge and into the platysma reduces. The arithmetic shifts. 2 paths from this point. In one, the elbows stay bent, the fascia continues compounding, and the jaw absorbs another year of downward pull. Silent, incremental, invisible, until a photograph makes it obvious. In the other, 60 seconds at the inner elbow, once a day, interrupts the compounding at its source. Not a reversal of time, an intervention in mechanics. The difference between these 2 paths is measured in years of accumulated tension that either continues or stops. The sleeve that runs from your inner elbow to your jaw is tensioned right now as you listen to this, held taut by the position your arms have been in all day. 1 press, 60 seconds, the source, not the symptom.